No, I think someone has lied to you. Take it from me, this invasion cannot be legal. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Judoon, written by Terence Dicks, which would actually be his final story that he wrote during his lifetime. He did write a story later on, way years down the line, in I think it was 2018, but sadly it was released post-mortem after he had passed away. So this was the last story that he wrote during his lifetime. This story also features the Judoon making their surprise return from their televised story Smith and Jones, in which, you know, the first appearance of Martha, and it's the first appearance of the Judoon. Of course, from our chronological ordering, we've already seen the Judoon in Change with the Sixth Doctor. So this is actually the third story that we'll be tackling with the Judoon. Very interesting there, yes. And so, not much to really talk about. You know, this is a quick read, one of the smaller books, very thin, only 100 pages long, around about this. The quick read books were developed to inspire older audiences to get interested in reading by making them a lot easier to read and understand, which is very helpful for me as I'm dyslexic and reading is like one of my big issues. So this was actually one of the first books I ever bought for Doctor Who, so I have a lot of nostalgic memories for this. But does it hold up? Is it any good? Does this story give a legacy to one of the best series of the revived era of Doctor Who? Or does it fall flat on its face? Strange thing to note as well, this story has Arthur Conan Doyle, like his name is mentioned in the back, on the back. Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes man, the guy who invented Sherlock Holmes. He's a character in this. I think I'll just bring it up here, because it's like, it was advertised. I remember, like, when I got this book, like, two of the main selling features of it, I was told, was A, the Judoon are in it, and B, the writer of Sherlock Holmes is in it. So I picked it up mainly for those elements. So that was like part of it. So, but anyway, the story starts off, we meet up with this character called Harry Carruthers. He is I think he was the secretary for King Edward VII. So they're in the Edwardian times, later in the Edwardian times, around, I believe they said 1902. The story is set during 1902. And it starts off at the height of the Scotland fields, at a castle, Balmoral Castle, and the king sends this guy off to a stag hunt, and we kind of get the thought process here that this guy Carruthers, he doesn't like killing stags, but the king has kind of made him go off and hunting. Why he doesn't just like come back and just say, oh, I didn't find any, is anyone's guess. But where we leave him off at the start of the story, he's looking at the stag, but he also notices that that there's a rain cloud, a comical rain cloud on top of Balmoral Castle. Obviously, this is the work of the Judoon, which have used a H2O scoop, something we've just seen in Jones and Smith. Oddly, these would be the only appearances of the H2O scoop. It's very bizarre. In fact, in this story, it's not even called the H2O scoop. It's called something else, and apparently it has nothing to do with H2O. It's reversal temporal technology or something like that. It's very weird. The science isn't chronologically consistent with that story, despite this possibly a direct sequel featuring, of course, the Judoon. And so the castle gets whisked away, and through the most part, the Doctor and Martha obviously arrive, meet Carruthers, and he explains what's happened. For half the story, it's basically just discovering what's going on. Martha and the Doctor quickly realize it's Judoon. Only Judoon seems to be in the habit of stealing entire buildings. The Martha is obviously quite sure because that's the only alien race she knows that can do that. The Doctor does go for a little bit of evidence finding using his scanner and stuff, and tries to track Balmortal Castle to a specific location, so that hopefully using the idea of the science to work out who the villains are, which of course it's the Judoon. Their name was in the title. It wasn't going to be the Cybermen. Like, that would just be ridiculous. Somebody should do that. That would be really funny. It's like a story. It's called, I don't know, The Occupation of the Daleks. But it's not a Dalek story. It's a Slovene story. That would be hilarious. Somebody should do that. That would just be hilarious. I'd love to see that. Anyway, that's a completely rant off topic there. So, for the most part, Martha Jones teams up with Carruthers as he tells the story of how, because the Doctor proclaims that there was a device that was left on this building, and that is how the Judoon took it. It looks like a sphere with a tornado in it. Again, this doesn't tie in with the technology of the Judoon that we've seen in Joan Smith. However, it is important to note that this story takes place almost 100 years prior. So this could be an earlier form of that technology. Who knows? And Carruthers is basically like, oh my god, the castle being kidnapped, somebody stealing the king. It's all my fault. I brought that orb onto the castle, as it kind of like shocks the Doctor and Martha. And they asked him more and more about like where he gets this device. He was originally sworn to secrecy, but because of the shock and revelation of the castle going disappearing, he slowly reveals that he got it from his old doctor, his old family doctor, who hadn't seen in years, suddenly arrived, gave him his orb, and panically announced that this needs to get to the king as soon as possible. It could be a perfect energy source, and that's how he came about it. But this doctor of his family doctor, but he hasn't met in years, and then all of a sudden came with this orb. He is now a well-known writer. This is where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle gets into the plot, as the Doctor is like, right, I'm going to scan the signals to take them to the castle, whilst you Martha, take Carruthers on a secret mission to find out more about the orb and hopefully find out more about who's doing this, what's happening. I love the Doctor's reaction to finding out like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is involved in these events, and it's like, what's Arthur Conan Doyle got to do with kidnapping the king? Why does he have alien technology? What is going on? It just occurred to me, the Doctor never meets Arthur Conan Doyle in this story. Huh. So Martha and Carruthers, the story is mainly focused on them. The whole of the middle pages mainly focuses around them and their meeting Arthur Conan Doyle. And what's really strange, like I said, I want to say this because this is really weird, because this is one of the things that brought me to this story, that advertised me to this adventure. The inclusion of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, with Doctor Who obviously having a good track record with historical figures, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is the writer of Sherlock Holmes, one of my favourite characters. And his role is mainly a cameo, an exposition, as Martha and Carruthers meet up with Arthur Conan Doyle. Martha is clearly like pleased to be in his presence, but like she's not like a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, so that impact isn't really there for her character. And so Arthur Conan Doyle, they mainly go up to Arthur Conan Doyle to find out where he got this device. And originally he is like, you swore the secrecy. I told you to don't tell anyone except for the king. And then like they come up with this backstory that Martha is one of the scientists working for His Majesty, and that she needs to know as well more about the origins of this device. And Arthur Conan Doyle kind of keeps to himself at the start, but then slowly reveals to them all about what's happened. And that's so Arthur Conan Doyle's plot. That is his segment in the story. Like I don't think it's really a criticism, because like he's not on the cover, and like I don't like it's only like mentioned on the back with the help of Arthur Conan Doyle. But like it's Arthur Conan Doyle. How weird is it that the Doctor Who has the chance to tell a historical figure, and he's just a cameo? Like that is just so odd. Like as soon as they find out, they basically, so Arthur Conan Doyle became part of a group of secret scientists hell-bent on learning about the mystical side of science, something like that. Obviously this is a mask for the real individuals, aliens who call themselves the Cosmic Peacemakers. And Arthur Conan Doyle basically explains like he joined their cult, and then they gave him the orb. He gave them the location, and then they go off heading for them. And what they meet, Martha and Carruthers, are these this individual who seems to be like perfect. The way it's described when they first meet him is kind of comically like Jesus symbolism. Like it was like stuff like they opened the door and a bright light came from beneath, and then like a perfect man in robes, almost angel-like, appeared, and he was like, I'm sorry, I'm so peaceful and kind. Obviously, the idea behind it is that the aliens are trying to show themselves as a peace-loving race, but in actuality, they're not. And Martha doesn't buy it, but they try to imitate human goodness. I don't think it really works here, because that element of this story is incredibly short. But I tell you what really does work is Martha's character in this. If there's one thing that Terrance Dicks has really improved compared to his previous story Made of Steel, is that this story, he gets the character of Martha. She is completely independent from the Doctor. She's charismatic. She's charming. She gets along with Carruthers, and she has a lot of bombastic personality, and it kind of feels like a setup to a Martha Jones spin-off, kind of. She has a lot more prominent role. In fact, the Doctor's role in this story is mainly a backseat. He hardly appears in the second act, and sometimes that could be sort of criticism. You could consider this a Doctor-like story, but Martha is such an engaging main character, and she basically is the Sherlock Holmes in this, like working out all of the plots and coming up with the schemes. That, like, I can't stress this enough. Terrance Dicks gets Martha in this story. How great of an improvement it is from his previous story, in which, you know, in some way the issue could be, you know, behind the scenes stuff, but in that story Martha is just kind of there. But here Martha is a prominent. I feel like Terrance Dicks realises the qualities of Martha, and he's using this story to make up time for it. And so she doesn't fall for it. She notices around the room that it's clearly alien technology. There's plastic there, and the furniture isn't entwined with the fashion of the modern day, and so they kind of lock them out because they come up with this kind of backstory. It's like, oh, sorry, we can't be much of help. The person who invented it, he's off away, but we'll get in contact with him, and as soon as we will, we'll get in touch with you. Obviously, try to push him out to the side. Martha and Carruthers decide, right, Arthur Conan Doyle knows more about what he's saying. I think there's something more here, so we're going to get back to him. So they head back to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, to which they reunite. However, Arthur Conan Doyle doesn't have any memory of the previous night. He has no memory of Martha, and he doesn't remember meeting Carruthers only 3 months ago, prior to the events of him giving him the orb. So from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's point of view, those memories of his encounters have been erased. Martha clearly puts together that this is the cosmic peacemakers putting their hiding the fact, trying to cover their tracks. And literally that is the end of the Arthur Conan Doyle. It's very strange how he's in it. They could have replaced him with another character, or, which I would have thought would have been a much more, I wouldn't say better, but much more plausible in terms of coming up with the story, is that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle joins them and basically replaces, in terms of the story, Carruthers. It's strange. It's strange how he's a cameo in this story. Not to say that it's a bad cameo, but his storyline is basically a cameo, and it has nothing to do with, like, he mentions the whole the history of Sherlock Holmes and how he actually hated the fact of Sherlock Holmes. That's one thing that, like, a lot of people don't realise. It's his creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, hated Sherlock Holmes and thought it distracted it in terms of the public eye from what he considers work that he is proud of, like his medical and his historical fiction, which was his two main things. And that gets mentioned in this story, but it never plays into the part of the story. His character is just sort of there, and it's really strange and it's really bizarre. So the Doctor is tracking the Judoon troopers, the Judoon troops, and he gets into the castle. It's here where he witnesses some Judoon at a glance in feet, but then gets has an interaction with another character. Just realise that one character he like appears, and they kind of like set him up as this kind of cool character, and he explains to Doctor about like what's happening in the castle. It's like, I remember the rain surprisingly going up, and then all of a sudden there's a desert because the Judoon have teleported Balmortal's castle into the Hazari Desert, millions away from most life forms, probably one of the most deserted places on the earth. And the Doctor discovers this and puts the TARDIS onto one of the sand dunes and goes there. And then it hits me in here where this character, he explains it, and then the Doctor's like, right, take me to thing, and then you could go back and hide. This story introduces a handful of characters, but literally only there for exposition, and then are gone. Like, yeah. And when we get to this point, which, by the way, is like, I think it's like slap bang in the middle of the book. It's like chapter 7 or 8. It's 14 chapters long, if anyone's wondering. There's characters where they just introduce themselves, explain what's going on, which helps the Doctor out, and then just disappear. Now, something as well you might have noticed in this vlog is that I've hardly talked about the Judoon in this story. That is because, despite them, in this title, on the cover, this was one of the big selling points of the story. The Judoon are hardly in it as well. Like, that was a massive disappointment. Like, I mean, I'm glad that they savoured their moments for later on in the book, and unlike other stories which we'll get onto, in which the Judoon appear at the start and then kind of disappear off the story. Here, like the first half, I wouldn't say they really build it up, because Martha and Carruthers' plot line has nothing really to do with the Judoon, but rather, as the Doctor suspects, who is putting the Judoon here, or what's their plans. So they already know that the Judoon aren't behind it. They are not the main threat, the main focus, which kind of fits into their thing that they're not really villains, they're thugs for hire. But when they do become a prominent role, Martha Jones and Carruthers, they try and break into the Peacemaker's laboratory, only to be quickly discovered, and they get teleported to the castle, rounding out, coming into the third act of the adventure, where the Peacemaker, who I believe his name was Professor Challenger, he reveals his true form, revealing that he is a lizard creature. They never state what species or anything he is, but my headcanon is that he's the same lizard-like race from Festival of Death, another novel which I've tackled during the Fourth Doctor era, if anyone's interested. But that's just my headcanon, there's nothing in the book that states that. And he is obviously the main villain. He pells everyone at gunpoint, and he's like, this my evil plan, and this is all my scheme, and he reveals himself to King Edward the Seventh and tells him what he wants to do, and he's going to use the Judoon to do it. And the third act, I think, in this story is really let down, and it's really strange because it gets let down as soon as the Doctor gets heavily involved in the story again. I don't know what that says anything about Terrance Dicks's writing in this story, or this story as a whole, but I felt like as soon as the Doctor gets involved in the story again, in terms of the main plot, because really the main plot was Martha's plot, the story in terms of quality, I felt like it's a massive dip. And Carruthers tells his plan, in which he created these orbs. He's using the Judoon orbs, which will teleport because he's put them in locations of great power all over the world, in rival countries, and he basically wants the king to take over the world when he basically evaporates all of his competitors, and the implication is that he'll be working, the king will be working under Professor Challenger, but he never states how he's going to control that. We never get to learn really like what happens after, what happens to the king. Why didn't he just kill the king, do all this, and become the ruler himself? Like, do you see what I mean? His plan, not that it doesn't make any sense, but it felt like, in terms of the detail, the strategy of it, this story did need kind of more rewrites to better understand it to the audience, because as it is, we just get a bunch of dialogue, a bulk of dialogue, and then that's about it. And I felt like that was really weak. The Doctor, we have then this little detour in which the Doctor basically pretends to be working for Challenger. And we get, he goes off. He planned to take Martha with him, but Martha stayed there, so his plan's kind of messed up. So he goes back to Balmoral Castle, which is now back in Scotland, because that was part of the promise. The Doctor convinced King Edward to pretend to work for Challenger, only with some deals, one being the Doctor's complete freedom, and B, bring the castle back to Scotland, to which Challenger agrees to, but again, he didn't expect not to take Martha, and so that ruins the Doctor's plan, so he goes back and saves them. when he gets back, he witnesses a giant war between the military and the Judoon. The Doctor quickly orders a ceasefire. It turns out that the general here is also a famous historical figure. I can't remember the name, but he's the guy who basically invented the Girl Scouts, and he is a huge part of the Scout movement. So, but I mean, like, the story never advertised it, it's never thing. But it was a nice little cameo, in my opinion. And it's here that the Doctor learns that the Judoon apparently had got, or at least Professor Challenger had authorization to take over the Earth, and that they have a seal of approval, and so Challenger hired the Judoon to help him take over the planet. Where the Doctor takes the scrolls, which details the law, uses his sonic device. It's like, oh wait, there's more text. And then it's like, oh, there you go. The Judoon reread it. It's like, the Earth isn't actually for property. It must be protected because of it. And the Judoon are like, oh, well, that's a bummer. Oh well, everybody head off. As the captain of the Judoon sent his armies back. And that's all really the Judoon's part in the plot line. Their only real plot line is that, like, we never see them enforcing an army. We never see them really be a part of the narrative. They do. The narrative part is that they take the castle out into the Hazare Desert and then back to Balmortal in Scotland. And that's it. And the revenge of the Judoon, like, the revenge part comes literally at the last chapter. Well, the second to last, because the Judoon actually aren't in the last chapter. The captain is like, Challenger, he has disgraced us. We are without honour. Doctor's like, don't worry, leave him to me. And the Judoon captain's basically like, well, you catch him, you get him, and restore my honour, and I'll be in your debt. Bye! How disappointing is it that we have one of the greatest acclaimed Doctor Who writers, Terrance Dicks, who has written so many Target novelizations, who has written some of the best stories in the series, The 3 and the 5 Doctors, The Brain of Morbid, well, technically The Brain, he technically wrote that, Horror of Fang Rock. The Horror of Fang Rock and other, it's Terrance Dicks. He is basically, as many people put him, the grandfather of Doctor Who, the Stan Lee of the Whoniverse. And he writes this is his only time that he has written for a revived series monster, a Judoon, the Judoon. And they are wasted. It is such a disappointment. And I feel like this third act really fails the plot. The final chapter is really just the Doctor tricking Challenger into super imploding with his techno mumble jumble. And the story ends off with the Doctor and Martha basically going on a world tour as they promise to take out all of the devices Challenger has put in around the world, tracking them down, basically going bomb hunting, which is kind of funny. Which kind of seemed like it was leading into something, but this would be the last quick read novel with Martha, and the quick reads are mainly standalone anyway, so I doubt they would have even bring that up again. But I felt like the final act in this story really lets the story down. So there's the Revenge of the Judoon. Overall, I feel like there are very good moments in it. I feel like Terrance Dicks has really got a handle of Martha's character, and her being a prominent character in this novel really shows just how great of a character she is. You won't get anything too in depth. It doesn't talk about her family or something like she needs to break down and learn about herself. This is a quick novel meant to be easily digestible. So it's mainly like a fun little adventure with Martha as the lead. And when it does that, when we learn about this mystery with the cosmic peacemakers, it's fun, it's fine. But the story is advertised as a Judoon story. And the Judoon are wasted. And worst of all, the third act really lets them down, both as in, like, they are the main, one of the Doctor Who's recurring villains, and just average monsters in this story. I feel like, as well as the Doctor's role in this story, really lets the story down. It feels like in this story, he just he just comes in and solves everything. Which I guess, is fair enough. This is a short novel, and the Doctor is this genius, our main character. But I felt like it got to a point where it felt like there was less creativity in this novel compared to previous Terrance Dicks works. And I might even say this is actually my least favourite Terrance Dicks story, which is a real shame. There's also the issue of characters being introduced to give exposition and then have nothing else to do with the plot, which I guess is fine when you do it once or twice. I mean, the Doctor Who story, The Empty Child, has a brilliant character who is only there really to do exposition. But here I believe the exposition is done very poorly, and it's a very dull experience reading the exposition. So I don't think the story really holds up well. I still have cherished memories of it. Like I said, it's one of the first Doctor Who novels that I bought. It was one of the first ones that I got to myself, I read, and when I first read it, I absolutely loved it. I was a huge Judoon fan, I was a huge Martha fan, and to go back to that era, so I personally would probably keep reading it and enjoy the hell out of it. But doing these videos with a much more critical mindset, I've noticed that I might have enjoyed it just for personal nostalgia. So there you go, that's Revenge of the Judoon. So join me next time where the tortured team are seeing ghosts as Jack and Tushika seem to be transported just after the World War II. And Jack meets someone familiar, or at least his name is familiar. But who is he? And what are they doing there? So join me next time for Captain Jack Harkness, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!